Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Creatives of Windsor podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Sherdown, and today I'm sitting down with local TV reporter, Sanjay Maru. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Before we get into this, I want to just say I'm a big fan of anybody who dedicates large chunks of their life to shining a spotlight on people and places and making this city better and putting a spotlight on things to do and what certain regions are all about. And this podcast does that. So I want to say I'm honored, and I'm a fan of yours, and I'm a fan of this. And I'm very impressed by not just you and the podcast, but look at this beautiful space. My goodness.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Obviously, I'm a fan of you. That's why I asked you to be on the podcast. And I followed your work and everything you do. So yeah, thank you very much. It means a lot.
No, this is it's fun to be able to do these kinds of things. I've just started parental leave from my job a few weeks ago, so as you can see, I'm not wearing a suit and tie. I'm kind of letting my hair down a little bit, so it's been fun. Do
you always have to wear a suit jacket when you're at work and on TV and stuff?
When I'm on TV, yes, especially if I'm in studio. The ask is suit, tie. At least the minimum is a collared shirt. And I've been talked to about that. So, make sure you're at least wearing a collared shirt. If you're going to wear jeans, make sure we don't see it because we don't want to see jeans on television. Make sure you're wearing khakis or dress pants. But there actually is, I don't want to say as formal of a dress code as maybe we may envision with the news back in the day, like when every single person was in a three-piece suit and like they were going to a wedding or something. But it's a little more casual, particularly when you see names like Bob Belichico and Chris Campbell, who just have the collared shirt, maybe the top button's a little open. So kind of weather's dependent, but for the most part, you want to be dressed up to snuff,
Yeah, for sure. Do you so if you have a jacket on and a tie and a dress shirt, do you have to wear a tie or no?
You don't have to wear a tie, but for me, I do like wearing the tie just because it completes the look, especially if I'm at the anchor desk. Now, if I'm outside, particularly in the winter, then I may just, do up the coat, has the CTV branding, and then what I'm wearing underneath, you don't really see it anyway, so I'm not really too worried about that. But in the studio, I do like to wear that suit and jacket for sure.
So are you, I want to just ask you about your job and everything at CTV. So what do you do there specifically? What are your main focuses?
Yeah, so it depends on what my role is on that day. So for the most part, I'll be a reporter. So what that means is the day starts at 9:30, and it starts with a meeting that we do virtually. So we have all the reporters, Bob Belichico, Chris Campbell, Michelle Molesky, myself, Travis Fortnum, Robert Lothian, and we'll all be in a meeting, and we're pitching ideas. We're pitching story ideas. And we'll go around, so Bob, what's your idea? Chris, what's your idea? Sanjay, what's your idea? And once we pitch our story idea, which can come from anywhere, by the way. So there's a city council meeting happening on Monday, and I noticed a little nugget of information that I think would be a good jumping off point for a story. Or if I, went to a school and saw that a student was doing something super impressive, and I'll tell the student, I'm going to pitch, whatever you're doing tomorrow, because that's a really cool thing that you're doing, and then I'll pitch that story. And then my producers will either say, yes, we want you to do it, or they'll say, no, there's another story that we want you to do. But regardless of whatever story I'm doing, I'm then, after that meeting is done, my first focus is, okay, I got to find my interviews. I got to line up my interviews. So I'm reaching out to, the key voice for that story. We've been doing a lot of tariff news. So if I'm doing tariff news, the first voice I'm usually going to is the union representing workers at the Stellantis Windsor Assembly Plant, because they're kind of representing that worker voice, boots on the ground. Then I'm getting an auto expert. And then if I have a third voice I need to maybe flesh out the story, maybe it's an MP for the region, maybe it's an MPP, somebody who can kind of round out that story. So my focus at that point is just lining up interviews. And then because our newscast is at 6 o'clock, I have a few hours beforehand that I want to have my interviews done. So that for me is about 1:30, 2 o'clock that I want to have all my interviews done. Could be 2 interviews, could be 3 interviews, but no matter how many interviews, my goal is 2 o'clock. Then by 2 o'clock, okay, so now my interviews are done. I want to have my script written. So I want to have that done by 2:30, 2:45. I'm writing the script. The intro that you hear the anchor read that goes into my story, I've written that intro as the reporter. And so once we hit about 2:30, and this is if everything goes well, by the way, because it's possible my first 2 voices could come through before 11 a.m., and my third voice says, I can't talk till 2:30. that pushes everything back. So, but in an ideal world, 2:00, I have my interviews done. 2:30, I have my script written. Then I send my script in for a vet. My producers will vet my script to make sure it looks good. It's factually accurate. It sounds good. Maybe there's extra details that don't need to be in there that can go on the web version that don't need to go on the TV version. They'll crunch down that script. We have to make sure we're in a certain timing format. So I want to make sure that I'm within 1:30 to 1:45. I might send in a script that's 2 minutes and they'll say, you got to trim that back a little. Then at 2:45, 3:00, my script is vetted. Now I'm cutting my story, which means I'm taking my interviews. I'm taking all the B-roll that I shot in between the interviews that I gathered, and then I'm stitching it all together. And now it's become a puzzle.
What do you use to edit on the video?
Yeah, so that's changed over the last year or so. Originally, when I started at CTV, we were using iPads. We didn't have a computer. We had an app called LumaFusion, and we would edit on an iPad. And it seemed, when I joined, I was very skeptical of LumaFusion. I said, there's no way I'm going to enjoy this, because my last employer, the previous journalism room that I was in, we used Premiere Pro and we used Avid Media Central. We used desktop-based.
I thought you were going to say Avid.
Yeah.
Avid's a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't a big fan of the Avid systems, especially at the time. So then we moved away from LumaFusion. I ended up really enjoying it because I could do an interview, sit in the van. I don't have to now drive back to the studio. I can just edit in the van, and you can send your story virtually there.
You have like a desk in the van?
Yeah, like the case of the tablet would become like a little desk that you just put in the wheel. You obviously park. You're not editing while you're driving, obviously. And you kind of wedge it between the wheel, and now you're just editing at your steering wheel. I've done interviews, which was super handy during COVID time, because you can just, get your B-roll. I'm not getting too close to people because of COVID time. I'm doing Zoom interviews, and then I could have my story done without having ever stepped foot in the office. So it was super handy, and I actually like the tactile feedback of, grabbing a clip and dragging it on the iPad.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that. So then in the last few months or so, we've shifted away from that to Premiere Pro, and that's my favorite editing software. I love Adobe Premiere Pro. It's my bread and butter. It's what I started with. So that's what I use to edit today. We do have the ability to take our editing laptops and edit from anywhere. I don't have to go to the studio and edit. I can go home and edit. I can sit in the van and edit. So it's very user-friendly in that sense for a reporter, but it really speaks to the need for, journalism students coming up to know how to be able to edit from anywhere. You're not always going to have the cushy studio and the AC, and you have your bottle of water. You might be editing in a van.
Yeah.
Between two interviews.
What are you shooting on, like video? Like what camera are you using?
Yeah, like we have a large broadcast camera. We were actually, I believe, changing models in the last few months. And because I'm on parental leave, I'm not really sure what the new model is at the time. But when you look at those big broadcast cameras that you see, if you drive around at certain events and you see a reporter, CBC, CTV, they tend to use the same style of like those large Panasonic cameras, the one that the back sits on your shoulder and you have the viewfinder and you pull out the screen and you're shooting like that. A lot of people don't know too that when we're doing interviews, they don't realize that we are a one-man show. I'm holding the camera while I'm holding the microphone. So when you see that shot on the news of, this person says this, and then they throw to a clip, and it shows the name, and you've got the person and the CTV mic, that's one person doing all that. There's no extra person with the mic and then someone else with the camera. I'm holding both together.
Jeez.
And it can get taxing on the shoulder. It's happened many times where, especially depending on the interview subject, they might ramble, kind of like I'm doing right now. They might ramble on their interview answer. And I'm just waiting for them to finish because my arm is getting really sore. And obviously, I'm not going to cut them off because that's very rude. And then if my shoulder does get sore, I'll say, okay, 1 second. Take a break, drop the camera, shake your shoulders out, and then you start again. That's why it's good to have a tripod.
Yeah.
So that you're just holding the mic, you switch arms when it gets taxing.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're in a rush, you have to get interviews quick, you have to get B-roll quick, you don't have time to do the tripod deal. You just have to, manually do it, one person show.
So you have a work van? So every day
Yes.
do you go pick up that van or do you take the van home with you?
Yeah. For every day we pick up the van, and it depends if there's an assignment that I have the next day that's very early. Then they might allow me to take the van home but that's in very specific cases.
Okay.
But for the most part, we have to keep the vans there, and then we pick them up every day, and then we bring them back. We park the vehicle back when we're done. So, I think maybe that's the most tedious part of the day, but definitely being able to edit in the van is just a dream.
What is your like how many like what do you work? Like what's your shift? What's your hours? When do you start, when do you finish?
Yeah, my standard shift is 9 to 5:30. We were talking before about what I do. If I'm a reporter, it's usually 9 to 5:30. Sometimes I might shift to an evening reporting shift, which is 2:30 to 10:30. If I'm a web writer, that shift might change. If I'm the morning web writer, I believe it's something like 7 to 3, and so I'm getting up a little earlier. But for the most part, I'm reporting. I was the weekend anchor at CTV News, CTV News Windsor. However, Bell Media had made some decisions to reallocate resources. The weekend newscasts were phased out, so now I'm full-time reporting. And I do love it. I mean, I will say that when I originally was moved from anchoring, I was a little upset because I liked the balance of 2 days I was anchoring, 3 days I was reporting, and then I had 2 weekdays off. Thursday, Friday was my weekend, which was fantastic. And then when they took away weekend news, I thought, oh my goodness, now I have to do 5 days of reporting. Now I'm going to be reporting on the weekend instead of anchoring on the weekend, which means I have to be out and about. But now this kind of veers into a different discussion where, especially in the summer, there's so much to do in Windsor, especially when it comes to just community events. So I'm not bored on the weekends. I'm not thinking, oh, what do I cover today? There's so much happening. And it's just a testament to how much Windsor's grown. The days of there's nothing to do in Windsor, I mean, I'm sure you know in your field that the days of there's nothing to do in Windsor are long gone.
Yeah.
There's always something to do in Windsor, particularly in the summer.
Yeah.
And so as the weekend reporter, like, for example, because I'm on parental leave, I didn't cover the Carousel of Nations this year. Mm-hmm. I messaged the reporter. I believe Bob Belichico covered it one of the days, and I was jealous of him. I thought, you get to be the reporter for CTV during the Carousel of the Nations. I mean, that's fantastic. That is so fun. So, I kind of lost my train of thought in terms of what your original question was. That's but okay. It's a fun gig. It's different every day. And people ask me, what's your favorite part about the job? And my favorite part is that it is different every day. And I could be talking to the mayor one day, and I could be talking to a 10-year-old who did something cool the next day that I would never even dream of doing when I was 10.
Do you cover a lot of like crime and stuff too, or do you talk to like the Windsor Police a lot for a lot of your stories?
Definitely. We because news is always breaking and police crime news is always breaking, so they might have press conferences for a really big case. So then I'll get a note in the morning saying, hey, somebody has to go to Windsor Police Headquarters. There's a press conference at 1 o'clock. So then we bring the camera, we go, and then we cover that on our newscast. And the thing about crime news too is that you can't telegraph it. It's not like community events where, hey, I'm the owner of such and such, I'm the CEO of such and such nonprofit organization, and next week we're going to be doing the launch of this thing, so we are inviting reporters to come. It's crime news. I might think that my day is set out. Monday I'll cover this, Tuesday I'll cover this, Wednesday I'll cover this, and then Wednesday morning they say, okay, drop your story because something happened, and you have to go cover that accident. I've seen cars flipped over. I've seen fights break out in front of me. I saw a construction worker get punched in the face right in front of me during a police incident. I've seen a lot of stuff.
Are you ever filming when that stuff happens or no?
For that fight, the aforementioned fight, I didn't catch that on camera because that wasn't tied to the actual story. But I remember one day in particular, I covered an accident on Walker Road where somebody had crashed their vehicle through a store. This was near the Best Buy. This wasn't the Best Buy, but it was near the Best Buy on Walker. They'd crashed through the store. So then I'm getting visuals of that. As that's happening, I see a commotion of police cars passing me to go somewhere else. And I'm thinking, there's a car through a window. Why are police cars going over? You're all missing it. The car's here, guys. I look over, and on the main road, now across from Best Buy, on the main road, a car's flipped over. Wow. And that happened in the same time. And then I believe 2 hours later, I had seen a report that another car had flipped on Walker at the other end of the road. And that was within a 2-hour span. And I'm covering two of those events because they happened right in front of me. So, yeah, the point of what I'm saying is just crime news is spontaneous. And sometimes it can eat up chunks of our time that we don't want it to. But, that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, for sure. When you're when you're doing reporting, you're putting these video stories together.
Yes.
Are you also writing the web story too?
Yes. Okay. So, and that's one of the things that we get taught in journalism school. I graduated from a program called Media Convergence, and that's what that's all about. Converged media, the ability to tell a story on multiple different platforms, tell it differently on those platforms, but converge it for one story. Mm-hmm. So, yes, we do our TV stories, and then we also write web articles as well. So it's now our judgment call to say, okay, what goes in the TV story that I don't have time to include, so I'll include it in the web story. Sometimes I might push to web, which means that once my TV story airs, then you'll see me on camera, and then I'll say a few facts about the story. I'll say, and by the way, for more on this, go to ctvnewswindsor.ca for much more on this story.
Yeah, okay.
And then that will redirect our viewers to say, okay, let's get whatever the extra nugget of information.
It's already live on the site before you
that's
are on the news.
That's the goal. I mean, depending on how busy the day is, if I can't get my web story started until the very end of the day because maybe my last interview came through at 3 o'clock, and now I have to focus on getting my TV story done in time for the newscast, which means I can't really touch web right now.
Yeah.
If that happens, now normally the goal is do your interviews, put up web, then work on your TV story. So by the time the TV story airs, the web story is already live. But that doesn't always happen. So if that's the case, then I'll say on the newscast later tonight, we'll have a web story on this on our website. And then it doesn't marry me to this has to be up by 6 o'clock. Because if I do say at 6, we have more on our website, there better be more on our website, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Right.
What so sometimes you're on AIM 800 too, right?
Yes. So because of the relationship between AIM 800 and CTV being owned by Bell Media, we do get the opportunity to do a lot of crossover work. So if Mike and Meg in the morning, or Patty Handysides, or Dan McDonald need a CTV reporter to chime in on any given story, we have the ability to call in, and then they'll request it. They'll say, hey, can we get a 11:30 in the morning hit from Sanjay on such and such story, and then I'll call into the show. And again, that just increases our reach, and it increases our visibility, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the relationship between CTV and AIM 800. I grew up listening to AIM 800 because I used to work at Chrysler. Now the Stellantis plant, but at the time Chrysler. And I really enjoyed that because, I enjoy chiming into AIM 800 now because I put myself in that era from maybe 8-9 years ago where I was working in the plant, and I would drive into the plant with my dad every single day because both he and I worked there, and we would listen to AIM 800. So now the idea that I'm able to chime in and be on an AIM 800 broadcast while maybe somebody else is driving into work, it's very rewarding, and I don't take it for granted. And but yeah, the ability to call into AIM 800 is there if it's needed. And yeah, depending on how big the story is, we want to be there on all platforms. We want to be there on CTV at 6, but we also want to be there on AIM 800 at 11:30 in the morning, maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. CTV News Channel, our national news, may ask for a hit as well on the same day. When the Stellantis plant was laid off, this happened a few months back, but they were laid off for a few weeks. The day before everyone went back to work, they had me cover that, okay, for national news, you're going to do a report in front of the plant live. That, okay, well, tomorrow, big day, workers are returning, they're breathing a sigh of relief, tariff talk, yada, yada, yada. Then 20 minutes later, AIM 800 said, okay, once you're done with that, call in to AIM 800. We need you to tell the same story. And then also you're going to package this for CTV's Windsor newscast. And then that Windsor newscast story might get picked up on another station. Toronto might air it. Winnipeg might air it because the Stellantis plant has national interest.
Yeah.
And then there's another layer of what we do too. Even though we're local reporters, depending on the nature and the interest of our story, we might be seen by other markets.
If the other markets pick it up, you don't have any more work to do. They just take the video you already made,
they just take the video we already did. But
Yeah.
now at that point, it's like you'll get a message. I'll get an email from somebody in Winnipeg saying, I saw your story. And I'm thinking, how did you see my story? And then CTV Winnipeg aired my story that I did in Windsor. So obviously it's a testament to the interest of that story, because not all stories get picked up, right? Obviously,
sure.
If we do 10 local stories for Windsor, maybe 1 or 2, and it's not a mandate. It's not like one has to get picked up by other markets. It's just whatever has appeal to Winnipeg. It's why when you watch the news, when you watch the Windsor News, not every single story is from Windsor.
Yeah, for
Some
sure.
stories are, let's go to this reporter from Winnipeg or from wherever. So
Yeah. Just to make things a little bit easier and kind of work together.
Exactly.
I guess you're all one team.
We're all one team. We're all on the same team. So we want to help each other and contribute. It's all about contributing content to our newscasts. A lot of us have 1 hour newscasts, and there's only so many reporters in Windsor. We cannot fill out 1 hour with Windsor news. We just don't have the ability to do that with the amount of people and the
How many
resources.
reporters do you have?
I believe right now we're at 6 or 7.
How many anchors are there that run the show?
Anchors, there's 2 anchors. So
Who is it right now?
Right now, 6 o'clock is Stephanie Mazzotti, and 11 o'clock is Ricardo Veneza.
Okay, so she does the whole hour by herself.
She does the whole hour. Yes, she does the whole hour by herself, and then the 11 o'clock newscast is half hour, and then Ricardo will do that on his own. And those
Okay.
are solo newscasts.
And is Ricardo, is he playing anything that you did during the day, or mostly he's doing stuff in the afternoon?
The 11 o'clock newscast will replay a lot of stuff you see at the 6. The 11 o'clock news is really designed for people who didn't see the 6 o'clock news, but there is the potential for updates. He may include updates that, weren't in the 6 o'clock news. For example, if let's say at 6 we covered a police situation, there was an accident or something, and let's say we couldn't confirm official details from police, and we just show visuals and say, here, there was an accident, we talked to neighbors, and then that's it. Then at 11, Ricardo will have already reached out to police over email, and he'll say, now we have an update to something we showed you at 6. We can now confirm that 2 people were involved, and, it was a hit and run, and yada, like all those details.
Yeah.
So
somebody's in the hospital.
Somebody's in the hospital.
Somebody's in this or
exactly,
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't only repeat stories. Of course, if we can't get new information on it, then we may just replay the story for the 11. However, once it's aired twice, that's it. So if the first time you saw a story was on the 11 o'clock news on Monday, you may see it Tuesday at 6, but then that's it.
You'll never play it 3 times.
You're not going to see it. You're never going to play it 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to see it on 3 newscasts, right?
Are you ever, do you ever go to the AM 800 studio and sit down at the mic on the show, or do you usually just call in?
For the most part, we're calling in because we're so busy with what we call the gather that we're doing. So if I'm, getting interviews throughout the day, I don't have time to go all the way to the studio. I'm really just calling from the field. I'm outside the Stellantis plant right now. It's quiet here. I can see the parking lot is empty, but tomorrow it's going to be, and so for me to now drive back to the AM 800 studio from where I am, it just wouldn't be feasible, especially because it's radio.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to go into the studio. Now, depending on the nature of the story, if let's say Mike and Meg are doing feature interviews, then you may want that personal touch of having the guest come into the studio. But for news, sometimes it's almost better that we're not in the studio. It almost gives you that immediacy of we're calling this reporter who's there at the scene of that accident, rather than there was an accident 3 hours ago, then they drove all the way here to tell you about it. It kind of takes away from the immediacy a little bit, I feel
For sure.
like.
That makes sense.
So, but to answer your question, for the most part, I would say 99% of the time we're calling in.
So I'm sure it was crazy hectic when you first started your career.
Yeah.
But now, are your days nuts? Are you just like, oh my God, I got to get all this done? Or is it pretty, is it more controlled, chaos?
Because the news is so unpredictable, there are still days, you can ask my wife, many days where I'm a chicken with my head cut off. And that's just the nature of the beast where, the story has to be sent in by a certain time, and I'm sending my story sitting in my van, the story's going up in the sky and going into our control room. I'm sending that story with 10 minutes to spare, 15 minutes to spare. I'm getting calls from my producers. We need your story. Where is it? We're on the air.
Okay.
There's many times we're on the air and I'm sending my story after we're on the air. It's not that, okay, once the newscast starts, everything's ready to go. If you're watching something at 6:02, something that has to be filmed for 6:30 might not be ready yet. And they're sending it at 6:05 because there might be technical issues. What if I go to send my story and the signal is poor? I have to now drive somewhere else in the city where the signal's a little better because we're using cell towers to send that story. Yeah. I may want to go home if I'm closer to home because the Wi-Fi is stronger, so now I can send my story faster. If I'm close to the studio, I'm going to rush to the studio. So the workflow changes every day, but yeah, it's controlled chaos in the sense of the tools we're using, I get more comfortable with every day. But it does get to the point where when you see 10 stories on CTV, they're all done a certain way where really the only outlier in terms of how my day goes is when people are available for interviews. There have been times where I'll chase a story where I have 2 interviews and then the third interview will say I can't be ready until 4 p.m. And I'll tell them that's way too late for my deadline. Now, what I can do is I could just do a phone interview, not get them on camera, not include them in my TV story, and include their quotes on web. What if they're the key voice? What if this story does not exist without that person who's only available at 4? So I have to eat it. I just have to do the interview at 4, and I tell my producer that here's the situation. I might not make it for 6. I might make it for 6:20. So please put me low in the show. And you have that conversation with your producers. We were talking about how many reporters, how many anchors. We also have producers who work behind the scenes. So they're the people who organize the newscast.
Yeah.
They decide that this is going to lead. Then we're going to go to this second. Okay, this first story's not ready yet. We're going to move this third. The second story now becomes the top story. Reporter doing the second story. Are you ready? Are you ready to go first? Okay, we need you in the studio to do a corner hit. So you're going to stand in the corner, kind of like this monitor. If you watch CTV News Windsor, you'll see, the anchor, and then they throw to a separate part of the studio.
So you're working late if you're doing that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing a corner hit, like your shift's not done at 5:30 then, because you could be doing that at 6:30.
Well, it might set web back. It might set my web story back, because if my shift is done at 5:30 and I'm doing a corner hit, let's say, now the potential for pre-tapes is always there. If, let's say, I have to pre-tape something or else I won't have time, I might ask my producer, can I please pre-tape this? But for the most part, we want to be, on the air when we're on the air. So we don't want to pre-tape stuff too much, because what if information changes? There have been times where I have been out in the field, I'll record something, and then an hour later I get a call from my producer saying, hey, what did you say in your stand-up? Which is the portion of the news story where you see me for 10 seconds. And I'll tell them, I said this. They go, none of that is valid anymore. You have to come into the studio now and do a new version of the story. And I'll tell them, well, I just did 3 interviews based on the old information. Well, you can't air them now. I'm like, so what? The last 5 hours of work were useless? Yeah, basically. That's the news. It can happen. It's not all the time, but it can happen.
Yeah.
And you roll your eyes and you sigh and you just go, and then you just go into the studio and you just give as many updates as you can, because now doing a whole new story from the field isn't feasible. You don't have time. Now you have to go into the newsroom, and you have to do an update story with the latest information, and it can happen. So to answer your question, there are days where I still feel like it's day one in terms of the chaos.
Yeah. Are you only doing one story a day?
For the most part, but there are times where we might do 2. Another reporter might call in sick. And then I might have to do my story as a full package, which is when you hear the anchor throw to, they'll read the intro and then say, with more, we go to CTV Sanjay Maru. And then you see a prepackaged piece for 1:30. That's a package. A pack, as we would call for short. So in the morning at that 9:30 meeting, they'll say, Sanjay, we want a pack on this. But if, let's say, there's an accident, is anybody available? No, Sanjay's the only one available because his story is near where that accident is. I'll get a call. Sanjay, do you have time to go to an accident? Yes, sure. Where's the accident? It's 2 streets from you. Car flipped over. That's all we know. Go. So now I'm doing a package on my original story, but I'm doing a VOSOT, which is a VO/SOT, voiceover, which is when you watch the news and you see the reporter voice over visuals. That's a VO. If they say get a VO/SOT, that's sound on tape, which is a clip. So when you're watching the news and you see the anchor talk for 10 seconds and then she talks over visuals and then they say Windsor's police chief says that, more information will be coming in the next few days. And then you go to a clip of the police chief. That's an SOT.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know when they say go get a VOSOT on this accident, then it's on me to, okay, let me get the visuals of the accident. Let me write up a few lines of copy. Okay, there were 2 cars involved. One of them was a red van. One person was sent to hospital. Now I got to get a clip. I reach out to police. We're not commenting. Now I got to get a new clip. Is there a neighbor? Is someone in the accident going to talk? Okay, nobody will talk. Let me call my producer. Hey, I can get you a VO. I can't get you the SOT. No one will talk. Are you sure? I tried to get somebody. Fine. Because I have to focus on this other story. I still have this going on. We don't just forget about this. So it's time management, controlled chaos in terms of the tools, but it's still chaotic.
Are you ever done quick with like a lot of time to spare?
Rarely. It does happen, but it's rare. It's rare. If it's a feature story where information's not really going to change and I get my interviews lined up. Now, that comes down to each individual journalist to line up their interviews. On Monday, I'm reaching out. I'm doing my story for Monday evening on Monday morning, but I'm also reaching out to my voices for a potential story for Tuesday. That, hey, tomorrow can I come interview you about such and such thing that's happening? So if I have those interviews lined up and I get those interviews at 10:30 and 11 a.m., I get my 2 interviews done. I thought my interviews would be done at 2. They're done at 12 p.m. I got 2 extra hours. I would still tell the producer that, hey, I might be done early, so if you need me somewhere. So am I done early? Rarely, but even when I have the chance to be done early, it's a chance to work on something else.
Yeah,
it's a chance to line up stories for another day. It's a chance to go to that accident because, car flips over. My producer's going to call all the reporters. Who can go? Oh, Sanjay, he did his interviews in 2 hours, so he's free. So that they call me Sanjay, even though my name's pronounced Sanjay, but that's okay. We love everybody. But yeah, so to answer your question, I'm done early with my story.
Yeah, but not
my work.
What days are you working now that you're a reporter?
Right now it's Monday to Friday.
It's
Monday to Friday, yeah.
That's nice.
One weekend a month, I rotate with the weekend person, so I'm Saturday, Sunday, and then 2 weekdays I'll be off. But for the most part, 3 weeks of the month, I'm Monday to Friday, which I love.
Okay, we're back. We took a little tiny cut. We're back in. So yeah, Sanjay just mentioned he wanted to talk about how you got into this program, school, where you came from. It's kind of interesting because we came from the same school, both of us actually.
We did.
I've taught there a bit. You took media convergence for 1 year at the college.
Yes.
Before that, you were at the university, but 1 year at the college. And you finished in 2018, you said?
Yeah, I believe 2017 to 2018. It was a 1 year media convergence program at the college. I had done 4 years of study at the University of Windsor, communications, media, and film. And so that allowed me to go right to the 1 year program, which is a graduate level program, which I qualified for because I did the 4 year undergrad at the university.
Yep.
And so that 1 year is a unforgettable year. I met my life. I owe so much of my life to that 1 year at the Mediaplex.
You're pretty much just a working journalist that year. You just happen to be in school.
Yeah, you're a working journalist, but beyond that, I met my wife in that program.
Oh, nice.
My wife was a student. Well, we both were students in the same year, 2017 to 2018, St. Clair College Media Convergence. So now we have a child. She's 10 months old. So
nice.
So much of my life, my job, CTV, that is because of the tutelage at the Mediaplex. So just in terms of getting into the field, it was one of those things where it happened by accident. I was working as a TPT at Chrysler, TPT standing for temporary part-timer. To be a TPT, you have to fulfill 2 criteria. One, you have to have a parent working there, which earlier I mentioned my dad and I would drive to the plant, so I checked that box. But you have to be a full-time student. You have to be enrolled in full-time school. The idea is let full-time students, work at the plant, make some money, pay off their school. We don't want a part-time student. We don't want someone who's not a full-time student. We want to give TPT spots to full-time students.
Yeah.
I did 4 years at the university and I was graduating. And every few months, Chrysler would audit the TPTs to make sure you're a full-time student. Show us your timetable.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you're a full-time student. So I was a little bit in panic mode because to be a young person working at Chrysler, it's a laborious job physically. However, it's great money for a young person. And I graduated from the university as a B student. So the best I was going to get at that time was working at Chrysler and making the money that I was making at that age particularly. So my goal, my focus now was I need to enroll myself back in school. So now what do? Do I go back to university? Do I look for something at the college? And I had driven past the Mediaplex all the time. And I'm one of these people I was the weird kid who grew up watching news instead of cartoons. I'm a big broadcasting buff. I'm the kind of person who will keep track of when The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and Late Night with Conan O'Brien will change their graphical intro packages. I'm that person. So I love broadcasting through and through. A lot of my voice and the way I talk right now is pieces of other broadcasters that I grew up listening to. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to call the Mediaplex and just see, is this feasible? Is this something I can enroll in? I called the Mediaplex and said, here's the situation. I work at Chrysler. I need to be enrolled in school. I'm about to graduate from the university, yada, yada, yada. And I got a call back from Veronique, who is the program coordinator at the Mediaplex. And the way she spoke to me was not like a number. She spoke to me like a human being. And she worked with me. And she said, if this is something you're very interested in, we have 2 options. You can go into the 2-year undergraduate program, which basically would kind of start you from scratch. Or because you did 4 years of university communications, media, and film, you can go right to the 1-year graduate level course. And so she said it might be a gamble. You may do the 1 year and then regret it and wish you did the 2-year undergrad. And I said, you know what? Let's take a gamble. Let's just do the 1-year graduate program. And so I did the 1-year graduate program, and things worked out. And I graduated. 3 weeks before I graduated, I started an internship at CBC Windsor. Mm-hmm. And that was really when the education picked up, because now I'm in a real newsroom. I mean, the Mediaplex is replicating a real newsroom. This is now a real newsroom where you're working with people who are, I was the weak link of CBC Windsor for years. It was to the point where it affected my mental health, not because of anybody's fault there, but because to go into work every day and know you're the weak link, and I was the weak link. Like, my only journalism qualifications was 8 months of the Mediaplex. I would say 1 year, but 4 months was summer.
Yeah.
So I've really only had 8 months of real journalism. I've had 4 years of communications, media, and film.
Minus a month at the holidays.
Minus a month at the holidays, but communications, media, and film isn't journalism.
Yeah.
It's how to make a movie. Journalism's a very different beast.
Yeah, like, did you know how to write a lead before you started the media convergence program, or no?
No, I didn't.
So you're starting from
I didn't know that lead in context of news was spelled L-E-D-E and not L-E-A-D. I didn't know that lead for news is L-E-D. I didn't know that. So I was coming into, now the advantage, because I had 4 years of communications, media, and film at the university, I knew the tools. I knew how to edit in Premiere Pro. So when we would get assignments saying, edit this piece for the Mediaplex, I was good at that, but not because I'm smarter, but because I did 4 years of that.
Yeah.
So now walking into a real newsroom, knowing the tools only gets you so far. They're paying for your ideas. This is something a producer once said to me at CBC Windsor. I'm paying you for your ideas. You can know how to edit and you can know how to use the soundboard, but what stories are you pitching? What's the original news that you bring to the table? Can you navigate a city council agenda and know what the relevant piece of information is? If the budget is going up by a 0.4% tax levy, how do you relate that to the audience? Do you just say, today there was a press conference and Mayor Drew Dilkins announced that the taxes are going up by 0.4%? You could do it that way. It's accurate, but it's boring.
Yeah.
Or do you interview a family who's struggling with the cost of living, and then you go to a graphic of, if you paid $1,000 in property taxes, the 0.4% increase means your taxes will now go up to this amount. And it's just a nice round number. And now we're relating that number and that percentage and that decimal point to an audience.
How do you find the low-income family to interview? In an hour.
Social media is a great tool, especially WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups. There's a lot of people who want to talk and want the opportunity to talk. So if I go into a WhatsApp group and say, hey, I'm a reporter with CTV.
Like,
and
what WhatsApp group? Like, what kind of groups?
There's just various community groups. I
Okay.
mean, it's not really one specific.
Like the South Windsor Watch page or something?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Or, like I live in LaSalle. There's a LaSalle community group. And even if I don't know, and the thing is, where I'm finding those sources can vary. I remember one time when I was at CBC, we were doing a live stream. I believe it was the mayoral debate a few years back. And someone commented that I'm about to get evicted. I know someone who's about to get evicted. The cost of living is so high. And I remember one of my coworkers said to me, because I jumped on that comment, and I ended up responding to that person and said, can you get me in touch with that family? And he did. And that was my first major story that I did that was original, that I pitched on my own. I had done stories for CBC Windsor that were big stories, but they weren't my ideas. They were stories that were given to me.
Yeah,
Sanjay,
yeah.
you're the new kid. We're going to give you this. Go try this out. But this was a story I found myself and characters I found. This was somebody who, her apartment was, it was a family. The family's apartment was filled with boxes because they were expecting to be kicked out at any day. During our interview, the police officer could have come to the door and said, you're out of here. It was that dire. But the cost of living was so bad. Rental bidding wars were starting to emerge at that time, where, instead of bidding wars when you're buying a house of, $450, I'll offer $475. Then you had rental bidding wars of, I'll pay $1,800 a month. I'll pay $1,850. Like, we'd never seen that a few years prior.
Yeah.
They were starting to emerge around like 2019, 2018, 2017 to 2019. Rental bidding wars were starting to emerge. So that was the focus of my story. It's a focus on rental bidding wars, but now let's take this family that's experienced rental bidding wars, unable to find a new place to live, on the verge of homelessness. They were concerned that we might be homeless tomorrow. We got 3 kids. So that was the first kind of major story that I had done. But again, the point of what I'm saying is CBC will pay you for your ideas, and that's what they want to know. So, so in terms of finding those sources, you want to find those sources that fulfill that idea. I need to have good ideas. I need to have good sources. So I might go on, social media. I might go in, Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups. I might comment scrape. CBC was doing that live stream and then somebody commented in that video, but CBC may not do a live stream. I might look at comments on Reddit. I love going to Reddit. The Windsor, Ontario subreddit is such a fantastic place to find sources. I'll just ask a question. Hey, I'm a reporter with CTV, and tomorrow I want to do a story about this, this, and that. Is there anybody that would like to talk? There are story ideas in my head right now that I'm not going to say because I don't want other journalists who hear this to take my ideas. But there are ideas that I have in my head right now that I'm just waiting for that talker.
You're working 5 days a week. On average, you're doing about 5 stories, right?
Yeah.
So of those 5 a week, how many are your ideas at this point in your career, and how many are given you by the producers?
At this point, I would say 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But not every week. There are some weeks where my brain is just not working, and I just tell them for 3 days in a row, guys, I got nothing today. I got nothing today. I got nothing today. Sorry. And CTV is very cool about it because there's always news, but you want to be that reporter that pitches the lead story. I mean, that's the goal. That's the incentive, right? So there's no financial incentive. It's not like you get a monetary bonus if you do, but it's just a feather in your cap that I pitched a story that, was the lead of the newscast. So the most people saw it, which means I worked so hard. I did all these interviews because the likelihood that someone's going to see a story at 6:01 is much higher than 6:45 in the newscast.
The biggest story goes first?
The biggest story always goes first.
Okay, not last.
All the time the biggest story is for the lead story.
Okay.
The first thing you see, we begin tonight with breaking news. We begin tonight with our top story. Because it's literally at the top of the newscast.
Gotcha.
So that lead story is always leading the newscast.
I don't watch the news.
That's okay.
So, I don't even have TV.
No, that's fine. Well, and now it's contingent on us as broadcasters to find those ways to reach other people. Yeah. Going on Samsung TV and having a channel there. Going into AM800. We have that. Going on AM800 because you might be driving and you might be listening to AM800. So it's on us to find those ways to get you the news if you don't watch CTV Windsor at 6 p.m.
Yeah. So, because I have Samsung TV because I have a Samsung.
There you go.
So I guess I could watch it on there, right?
Yeah, it's CTV's national news that has a channel there.
But not Windsor's, though?
Not at the moment. CTV Windsor's not on Samsung. But
what are you guys on, like regular cable?
Yeah, we're on CTV2 is the regular cable station. And then actually something I've just noticed in the last few days with me being on parental leave, I noticed our full broadcasts are now on YouTube. If you go to CTV News, all of the regional newscasts, not live. Okay. It would show up a few hours later, but you can catch up on the news. Individual stories get put there too. So if you see a YouTube video, if you subscribe to CTV News and you see a headline that catches your attention, you can watch it. It might be a story from Windsor. It might be a story that I did. So we're trying to find those ways to reach people. That's why web is so important, where on one hand, as a TV broadcaster, I want to get my story on the news. I want to make it for my 6 o'clock spot. But more people are going to see it on the web. And it's going to live longer on the web. It's going to air from 6:04 to 6:06 on TV. It's going to be on the web forever.
Yeah.
So where do I allocate my resources? Do I just take that TV story and just put it on web? Do I do a different version of it that might be more compelling for a web? So it's just thinking about all those things to get eyes so that people like yourself who don't have traditional TV can still see our content.
Okay, I want to go back to actually what you talked about when you're editing in a van.
Yes.
Okay, you're shooting these big giant broadcast cameras and you're editing on an iPad. How are you getting the footage from the camera to the iPad?
So we have an adapter that is an SD card adapter to Type-C.
To Type-C.
So
those work?
Those work, yeah.
Right.
It works. So
how we sell them? I didn't know if they worked or not.
Standard SD, take it out of your camera, pop it into the adapter, transfer all the footage, you're good to go.
See, like I'm shooting and transferring footage all day, every day, hundreds of thousands of gigs a week, but I get to do it all at my desk.
Right.
So I get to do it the fastest way.
Right.
The easiest way.
Right.
You know, I'm not doing it on
the road.
Now,
for the most part, we're using the broadcast cameras, but sometimes, if let's say I'm at an accident, I might just use my phone.
Okay.
And then at that point, it's just... maybe I'm just, using Dropbox or Google Drive or something to transfer the files to my work laptop. Or I'm just still using that adapter. I plug it in, it's Type-C, adapter to SD card, but it's now just like a USB drive at that point, except instead of a USB drive, it's an SD card. So take it out, put it into my work laptop, and boom, I'm editing.
Every once in a while, I have to make a video for a client, and it's just for social media, so I do shoot it on my phone.
Yeah.
That's always a pain because it actually takes longer for me to get the footage from my phone to the computer than if it was a memory card.
Yeah.
Because a really fast computer, just plug the memory card in, it takes like 10 seconds. But with the phone, I have to like throw it to iCloud or Google Drive.
And the color grading is different too, right? On iPhone, I've noticed I'll take a video on my work iPhone, then I'll view it on my Android, and it doesn't look the same. The color grading is all messed up. It doesn't have that saturation maybe the contrast that it would. I think it's like an Apple specific ProRes deal or whatever. But
that might make sense. I color
Yeah.
correct anyway, so I guess
Right.
it's kind of relevant to me. But yeah, no, I see what you mean.
well, we'll color correct too, but then I have to color correct.
Yeah.
Which I didn't think I'd have to do. I didn't want to have to do. So
But yeah, now you have to do it.
Now I
yeah.
have to do it. So it eats up a little bit of time, but part of the territory.
A lot of times when I'm doing like we're doing like big video projects, like especially a wedding.
Yeah.
Like usually if somebody else coming to shoot with you, if they're shooting on the same brand as you, the chance of them shooting the exact same camera
Sure.
as you is rare.
Sure.
If they're shooting on the same brand, a different camera still looks different. Even if they're shooting the exact same camera, sometimes it looks
Yeah.
different. But shooting on like a Sony and I'm shooting on a Canon or a Nikon, whatever. Yeah, color grading that after there is a difference, like a big difference that you have to work out.
In terms of when I experienced that, so beyond CTV, I also do commentary for local pro wrestling organization called NCG, Noble Champions Group. I also edit their full matches. And so if we have the wide cam that gets the ring, and then you have 2 ringside cameras, it's a lot of work to color grade that and make the cameras match because they're not all the same cameras. You might have the contrast that looks a little washed out on the hard cam, which is the wide cam, and then the roving cameras are like super sharp. The depth of field is very nice. And then as I'm editing these full matches, we go to different cameras, and it's like, going from an iPhone 3000 to an iPhone 10 to a Nikon. So like it's just different. Looks right. So to get that all to match is I've experienced that. It's definitely difficult.
So is that wrestling you do? Is that only in Windsor?
Windsor, Essex. So right now we haven't done a show in Windsor, but we have a show on June 28th. Well, I'm not sure when this will come out, but June 28th there's a show in Leamington.
It won't be out yet.
Okay, that's fine. We can cut that part out. But what I'll say is, so back on June 28th, we just did a show in Leamington, but there's another show happening, I believe, in August or September. That's in LaSalle. And then where we go from there is kind of anyone's guess, but I don't make those decisions. But
the same wrestlers in every event?
Not the same wrestlers, because these are freelancing wrestlers. We're not a WWE or TNA. We're not the big guys. So we don't have people that are exclusive to us. It's really just, are you available on this date? We happen to be doing an event. We like to bring certain people back because we have certain storylines and, we like to keep that going. But it's possible we might have a storyline that's contingent on one guy. We book a date and then we ask him, are you free? No, I'm not free. Okay, we got to change the storyline a little bit. Do we skip the next chapter of the story and just do it at the next event because this guy wasn't available?
A lot of locals or no?
A lot of Canadian locals. Not really Windsor, Essex locals, but people from all over Canada, some in the US as well, but... try to keep it close to the area. Windsor, Detroit wrestlers.
I went to the Maple Leaf wrestling thing at St. Clair back in March, and that was pretty nuts. And the week before, it's funny because this is the only 2 I've ever gone to, and they were like a week apart. But the week before, we went to like a Lucha Libre wrestling in Mexican Town in Detroit.
Okay.
That was actually, in my opinion, was more entertaining than the Maple Leaf one because that was like a lot, like the Maple Leaf one was very high scale at St. Clair. It was like, it was really nice, got nice quality. But the one in Detroit was like, there was like, I don't know, 50 people there and they were just like in a ring. But they had a great storyline though. And like the wrestlers were standing by their merch tables after like.
Everyone's in masks?
They actually
Lucha,
weren't like, it was just called that, but they weren't.
Oh, okay.
There was only like maybe one like actual like lucha kind of wrestler.
Oh, wow.
But no, they had like a story they were following and like they were like really in character and everything, but then when they were by their tables 10 minutes later they were just normal people.
Exactly. Pro wrestling is such a wacky thing and I just love it because it's such a blank canvas. There's no rules to follow. There's people will tell you, a lot of old-timer wrestlers will tell you that there's a way you have to do things, but wrestling is such a blank canvas. Like you can kind of do anything as long as it's fun and it makes sense to the audience and there has some logical flow in terms of a storyline if you're trying to tell a story. Some wrestling organizations aren't trying to tell a story. They just put matches on and people just go and they watch the wrestlers and that's the end of it. And if that's what you want to do, that's what you can do. There's no problem with that. But if you want to tell stories, then as long as you're just putting on some kind of entertaining show, there's no specific format of this guy shouldn't face this guy and, you shouldn't make this guy a good guy or bad guy. You can make anybody a good guy, make anybody a bad guy. I think anybody can fit any role as long as you make it make sense. But this is ultimately what I love about pro wrestling.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's cool. Any like creative avenue that's different and unique is just fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about your work in the past and where you're at now and everything. What are your goals? Do you have any goals for the future, or do you just really like what you're doing right now and you just want to be the best at that? I guess
it's funny that you mentioned the word goals because I was just thinking about this the other day in terms of, and I will answer the question in a second, but in terms of the word specifically goals, when I was coming up in journalism, there was a lot of people who looked at me as like, wow, you're the student, you're the top student who got into, CBC and CTV, and you're the one that made it from our year in the Mediaplex. But I don't think of myself that way, because for me, I think I did two things. I swear I'm going to get back to your question, but I think there's two things I think I did. Number one was follow instructions. You know this, teaching at the Mediaplex. 95% of the success is follow the instructions. If we tell you to shoot a black and white photo of a person following rule of thirds, give us a black and white photo of a person following rule of thirds. And the example I use when I visit the Mediaplex and I talk to students about this, the example I use is that every Friday, that's at the time, I don't know if it still happens on this day, you would know better than I do, but every Friday we would do the Live at Ones newscasts.
I don't think they have it anymore.
Okay, not anymore. But at the time they were doing Live at One newscasts. So these were 5-minute or 10-minute newscasts that would air on community cable. So even though it was a quote unquote rinky-dink student newscast, it was airing.
Yeah, on a station. When I was a student there, it was every single day.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So in the class I was in, I believe, there was everyday newscasts, but the ones that I was a part of was just once a week. And the professor would say, show up TV ready no matter what your role is. So if you are an anchor, obviously you show up TV ready. If you're a reporter in the newscast on air, you obviously show up TV ready. If you're a web writer and we're not going to see you on the news, you still show up TV ready, because anything can happen. Somebody could call in sick the day of. Your anchor falls out. Okay, now the reporter becomes the anchor. We need a third reporter. Sanjay, can you go in? And so I showed up TV ready. I showed up in a suit and tie, even though I had no reason to do it because I was writing web articles behind the scenes on my computer where nobody would see me. But because I followed instructions, I wasn't smarter than anybody else. Because I followed instructions, I found success.
Yeah.
A lot of the other students, and this goes back to what you were saying about the word goals. I guess goes back to your question about goals and really what I'm saying, which is rambling a lot. But I think there's a lot of people, and I think it's a struggle that I see with a lot of people who don't know what they want to do in their life. I think younger people today are much better about it, of knowing what they want to do. Just recently, a few weeks ago, I was at a school where it was a career day. We were inviting a few people, including Sanjay from CTV, to talk about their careers and hopefully inspire the youth. I was more inspired by them because 90% of them said, I'm going to be a cardiologist. I'm going to be an anesthesiologist. They're in grade 9, and they're saying this to me. And I thought, wow, I did not have these goals and dreams in grade 9. But there are a lot of people who don't know what they want to do. And I think it's because they confuse dreams with goals. If you ask a journalism student, what's your goal? They'll say to work in the field. That, to me, that's not a goal. That's a dream. A goal is, this week I'm going to get better at active listening. This week I have an assignment that's due, so I want to make sure that I get it done on time. This week I'm going to pull one of my professors aside so that I can have a one-on-one conversation about what it's like to work in the field. Because as you know, the Mediaplex has a lot of people working there who are actively working in the field. Mm-hmm. They're not people who, 20 years ago, I worked in the news. They're people who would literally teach Monday morning, and Monday evening they're going to CBC or CTV or AIM 800. So to me, that's a goal. So to your question of what are your goals for
the future?
For the future.
Yeah, what do you like? What do you want for your career in the next couple of years, I guess?
My goals for the future, my dream is to become a better broadcaster. How I do that, I'll frame my goals are to just keep being on air as much as possible, because the only way you get better at broadcasting is to keep being on the air. I know I'm going to be rusty when I go back for my parental leave because I haven't been on air, and this will be the only on-air thing I'll have done in 2.5 months.
When are you back? What date?
I believe it's mid to late August.
Okay.
Mid to late August. So it's only a 2.5 month parental leave. My wife took 10 months off, and now I'm taking 2.5 months. So it'll fly.
She's still off or no?
She's back to work. She just got back to work. I've just started a few weeks ago, my parental leave. So, and these few weeks have flown, but yeah, so in terms of my goals for the future is I want to be a better broadcaster because I want to be versatile. I want to be somebody who they can say, we want you to go do this news report live, and then also say, hey, tomorrow we're going to have you fill in on this talk show. And then the next day say, hey, there's a wrestling event. We want to bring you back to do commentary. Because I get called every event. I'm not locked in with NCG Wrestling. It's just every event they go, okay, we'll keep you. Okay, we'll keep you. Okay, we'll bring you back. Okay, we'll bring you back. And so my dream is to keep growing, because if I stop growing, what am I doing at this point? Like, I pride myself on my ability to keep doing something else and keep doing the next thing. So my goal to keep accomplishing that dream is just keep pushing forward. Just keep taking opportunities like this. This is a perfect example. I haven't done a lot of podcasts. I'm usually the one on your side. I'm usually the one asking the questions. So if somebody said, okay, your dream is to be a better broadcaster, how are you going to do that? Okay, what's your goal to do that? This is a goal right here. Be on a podcast. Yeah. Talk about myself, because I rarely do that. I rarely talk about myself.
Yeah.
Publicly.
I'm sure
Privately, I can ramble, but publicly, I rarely talk about myself. I'm always talking about other people, to a news audience.
Yeah.
So, the point of what I'm saying is just, I would ask for people who listen to this to not confuse their goals with their dreams, because goals are not dreams. Dreams are not goals. Dreams are what you get when you fulfilled your goals.
Yeah.
And if you ask somebody what's your goal, they'll tell you their dream. And so take your dream and break it down into goals. What's your dream?
What can you do this week for
What can you do this week? What can you do today?
You can't do the dream this week.
Yeah. What can you'll ask somebody who's in a dead end job, what's your dream? To not work in this job anymore. Okay, well what's your goal? To not work in this job. That's a dream. How are you going to do that? Okay, well, I'm going to make myself financially able to leave this job, because that's why I'm stuck in this job. That's why I can't leave. Yeah. Okay, well, can you upskill yourself?
Yeah.
Can you take a shift that's earlier so you can go to school at night? Like, things like that, so that dream can be fulfilled of, I left that job, which is where I found myself at Chrysler. I didn't want to work there for 30 years. No disrespect to anybody who does, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. That wasn't my dream. Mm-hmm. And so when I had the opportunity to join the Mediaplex, I ticked that goal. I enrolled. And then when I saw that, these are professors who actively work in the field, let me make a good impression. That was a goal. Okay, how am I going to do that? I'm going to fulfill all my assignments. I'm going to do them all on time. If they say, come into the office or come into the class next week with a small cup of coffee, because that's the assignment, I'm going to show up with a small cup of coffee. And they might say, we just want to test your ability to follow instructions. We don't have to do anything with the cup. Cool. I followed instructions. I'm coachable. That's my goal, to show you that I'm coachable. So if you're losing focus, which I don't have to tell you, you are, fantastic at everything you're doing. You've got 10 things you're doing, which is incredible, by the way. But for other people who might hear this and just struggle with, like, okay, Sanjay's working at CTV and, he got this. I didn't get this because I'm smarter than anybody. My wife will tell you I'm not that smart. It's just listen, follow instructions, set those goals, and you can make any dream come true. Mm-hmm. If you show the right people you're coachable, and you show the right people you have the ability to parse out that dream into a series of goals. So that would just be my message to anybody who listens to this and is maybe wanting to do something else with their life. It's always attainable. I know it's cliche to say, like, your dreams can come true, but it can be. There are some people who will hear that and say, no, not all, everyone's dreams can't come true. You'd be surprised. They can. They really can.
And the big difference between a dream and a goal is putting it down on your calendar. Like I said, like you said, like, what can you do? Like, if you have a dead end job and you don't want to do that anymore, well, you're not going to have a new job this week.
Right.
But what can you do this week? And
Sure.
what can you do next week? And what can you do in a month?
Sure. I'm going to take a portion of my earnings and put it towards school.
Yeah.
There, that's a goal that you didn't do the week before.
Yeah.
You've just fulfilled that. Great. You're already a step forward ahead than you were last week. Better today than you were yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I want to be better tomorrow than I was today. And that's it.
And 5 years goes by like nothing, and you could be in that new spot. You know?
I remember the quote that really inspired me, and I know it might be silly that this quote inspired me, but I'll say it anyway, was, and I'm probably paraphrasing, I don't remember word for word, but it was something to the effect of, if you have something that you want to do, like, and it'll take a year, take 2 years, just do it. The time will pass anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I remember
2 years is coming anyway. So,
and it was one of those things where at the time I'm like, it'll take a year, it'll take 2 years. And then when I read that, I'm like, yeah, 2 years is going to go anyway. I may as well just do it.
Yeah.
So, and then look where we are now, right?
Yeah.
So it's, things have worked out, and I'm very lucky.
Yeah. The time goes by anyway.
Time goes by anyway.
You can be doing what you want in that time, or you cannot be because you didn't want to spend that time. Well, you're spending the time anyway. So
I was on TikTok the other day, and somebody said, "Choose your hard, choose your difficult." You can, being healthy is difficult. However, there's the benefits of being healthy, and then there's being unhealthy, which is easy, but there's the difficulties of health issues and this and that. Yeah. So you choose your hard, you choose your difficulty. And I thought, wow, that blew my mind when I heard that.
It's actually, I go to Good Life. I don't think it's there anymore. They've done remodeling, but years ago, it might still be there. On the wall, it said that. It's like being healthy is hard. Being unhealthy is also hard. Just in a different way.
Exactly.
So like, what do you, they're both hard.
Yeah. There's no one's easier than the other. They're just different experiences.
Yeah. That's the best place to end a podcast ever with those inspirational quotes. So thank you very much for coming on. Yes, it was nice to have you on. So thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
That was a more perfect ending. That was very inspirational ending.
That was great.
Thank you.